Hey guys, it's Kaylor. Welcome to the YouTube channel. In today's video, I have an Adobe XD auto-animate tutorial for you guys. We're going to be designing and prototyping what you see here. So we're going to create the UI slider that adjusts the graph, and also we're going to animate the numbers at the end. Before we head over to Adobe XD, today's video is sponsored by Milanote. Milanote is a bit different than traditional software. It's more like working on a wall in a creative studio. It allows you to map out your projects, gather and organize all of your inspiration in one convenient place, and it also allows you to collaborate with your colleagues or clients in real time. As a designer, it's an essential part of my workflow, and this awesome tool is free, so check out the link in the description. Before we begin, make sure you guys download the project file. Link will be down in the description, and that'll get you right up to the start of this video so you can follow along with the tutorial. So this is what the project file is going to look like. It's just a normal iPhone X artboard, and I have the layout grid set to 2 columns, and the width on that is 17. So we have 17 spacing on each side, and that's going to be the spacing throughout the design. All right, so to start off our design, I'm going to drag out a status bar, and I'm just going to center that up and then align it to the top of the artboard. After that, we're going to have the user profile icon. So I'm just going to hold Shift and drag out a circle. I'm going to hit the lock icon and set this to 48 by 48. Then I'm going to touch it to the side of our first column, and we'll set the spacing on this 54 from the top. That's going to allow us to have enough room up here from the status bar. So the first thing I'm going to do on this is I'm going to select the border, and I'm going to apply a border of white, and I'm going to change the size to 3. And make sure this is on the inside as well. Next, I'm going to check the shadow, and I'm going to go down here and select this first one. The color code is 9BC5FF, and this is at 16% opacity. Then I'm going to select a face and just drag it into the circle. I'm going to double click, and we'll just reposition this a little bit better. So out next to this, we're going to have our account information. So I'm just going to put, let's do $5,000 for now. I have the character styles already saved. I'm going to select the H1, which is Open Sans font, and it's 24 pixels in size. I'm going to line this to the left, and then I'll just touch this up here and then go over 10 spacing for now. Below that, I'm going to put the month and savings. And I'm going to select the small font, which is 13 size font. And I'm also going to set this to text gray, and the color code on that is B5BFD0. Just going to line these up together. I'm going to group them with Command G and then center them up to this icon. Out over here to the side, I'm going to drag out my closing icon, and I'll align that up with this icon. So that is the start of our design. I'm actually going to double click on this and then just bring that up a few pixels, and then I'll just recenter this grouping. Much better. I'm also going to put some cents on here as well. That way we have a more accurate number. Below this is going to have our graph. So I'm going to drag out a circle, holding Shift. I'm going to set this to a width and height of 250 pixels. Then for now, I'm just going to set it to a gray and remove the border. Just center that up. It doesn't matter on the height for now. We'll change that later. I'm going to hit Command C, Command V to make a duplicate. And then I'm going to set the height to 150. So it's exactly 100 smaller. And I'll just change that color to a darker gray so we can see it. I'm going to center them together, select both, and then go up here and select Subtract. All right, for the height, I'm going to put this 162 pixels from the top of our design. So that should give us 60 pixels from below this icon. So that's going to be our placeholder for our graph. I'm going to select this group, hold Alt and drag out a copy. I'm going to ungroup with Command Shift G, and I'm going to center those together and then regroup with Command G. Then I'm going to center align that back inside of the circle. Next, I'm going to go inside of this grouping and grab the November savings. I'm going to make sure this is centered, and I'm going to change this to monthly income. also going to select the dollar amount, center that up, and then change this value as well. All right, so below our graph, I'm just gonna say how much, question mark, and I'm gonna set this to our H2, which is also the text gray, and this is size 15 font. I'm gonna position this 45 pixels from the bottom of our graph and make sure it's touching the side margin. Then I'm gonna hold Alt and drag over. On this one, I'm going to align this to the right, and I'm also gonna set this back to our H1 size font. I'm gonna make sure this is centered, and then I'm gonna change this to $100. So in this section right here, we're going to have our slider, and the same thing with the graph. I'm gonna put that off and we'll design that in just a second. Down here at the bottom, we're gonna have a button. So I'm gonna drag out a rectangle from one margin to the other. That should be 341 wide, and I'll set the height to 55. Put that 30 pixels from the bottom, and I'm also going to apply a border radius of 5 pixels. I'm gonna set this to red, which is EA3869. And also I'm gonna remove the border. Inside of here, I'm gonna put add item. This is also going to be size 15 font, but I'm gonna change this to white. I'm going to make sure this is center aligned, and then we can center that up inside of our button. Now we need some fields so that we can input what this item actually is. So we're gonna have a input, and then we're also going to have a category selected for how this is going to play into our budget. So I'm gonna hold Alt and drag up, and let's do 20 spacing. I'm then gonna change the height on this to 50. I'm gonna set the fill to white, and then I'm gonna check the shadow, and I already have this preset for you. I'm gonna select the middle, and that color code on that is 8E99A8, and this is at 20% opacity. On the Y value, I'm gonna change that to 1, and then on the blur, that can remain at 6. So I'm just gonna drag this over to about halfway, and then I'll hold Alt and create a duplicate. So this duplicate, I'm gonna set this to about 80 pixels wide, and I'm gonna touch it to the side of the margin. Then I'm gonna drag this one all the way until it touches that one. Hit Command C, Command V, that will make a duplicate. And I'm gonna hold Shift and hit the left arrow key, which will move it over 10 pixels. If I zoom in, I can select the one underneath and then just drag that over, and then I can delete the one on top. So that's a good way to get that spacing in between there. Actually, I'm gonna make that just a little bit more. So I'm gonna go over another 10, and then we'll just drag that back over. I'm gonna hold Alt and duplicate this add item, and I'm gonna set this to black. I'm gonna line this to the left, center it up in the rectangle, and put 20 spacing on the left. I'm also going to duplicate this and change this to food. Change the color to red, center it, and then center it inside of this other rectangle. Just like that. And one final thing we need to do for this input is drag in a pin icon for the location. So if the user selects this, they'll be able to set the location. And I'm gonna put 20 spacing from the right side of our rectangle. And I'm also going to set this to the text gray, which is a little bit darker than this gray up here, so it's gonna look a little bit better. So now we are ready for our slider and our graph, which is going to then allow us to do our motion in the prototype tab. So I'm gonna drag out a rectangle from one margin to the other. I'm gonna set this to 6 pixels high. I'm gonna fill it with the element gray. Color code on this is EFF4FA. And then I'm going to remove the border. And on the border radius, I'm gonna set that to 1000 just so it rounds the ends nice and even like that. I'm gonna try to center this up the best I can in between the bottom of this. So let's actually group this together, Command G, and the top of this input. So about 84 pixels in between each of those will work. So that's exactly centered in between there. I'm gonna hit Command C on this and Command V to make a duplicate. I'm gonna change that to red, and then we can just drag the width over somewhere around there would be a good starting point. So now we need the actual slider itself. So I'm gonna do that with a circle. So I'm gonna hold Shift and drag that out. And this is gonna be 28 by 28 pixels. I'm gonna center that up. And I'm gonna set that to red. And on the border, I'm gonna change that to white. And we'll set that to a size of 3. Also gonna select the shadow. And we're gonna select the middle one here. And then I'm gonna change the Y value to 1. So that is our slider. And the last thing we need to do is create our graph. All right, to create this graph, I'm gonna select the shape we already have, hit Command C, Command V. Then I'm gonna change that to the blue color. And I'm gonna grab the pen tool and I'm gonna go from the center of this circle outward, straight up. And I'm just gonna come all the way around to there and make that a completed shape. So we're basically going to cut the rest of this away and leave this piece here. So I'm gonna fill this and remove the border. With that selected, I'm gonna hold Shift and grab the blue circle, and I'm gonna go up here and select Subtract. So now this is all we have. So now we need to round each of these sides off, and we're gonna do that with a circle. So I'm just gonna drag one out holding Shift, and this needs to be 50 pixels by 50 pixels. So I'm just gonna line that up. And then hold Alt and drag down. And then line that one up. So now we can select the shape, hold Shift and select both of the circles, and then select this option, which is Add, and that'll combine those together. Now, so that we make sure that we can prototype this accurately, what we have to do is select the background shape, the gray one, hit Command C, Command V, and then I'm gonna send that back 1 with Command left square bracket key. With that still selected, I'm gonna hold Shift and grab the blue little shape, and I'm gonna hit Command G. And then that's going to create a grouping like that. So inside of this grouping, I'm gonna double click and I'm gonna select the gray circle and then remove the fill. So now we have this. So we have this box with this gray circle inside that's 0% opacity and this blue shape. And the reason I've done that is so now when we go to Prototype tab, all we have to do is rotate this and you can see that it moves around the circle really nicely. So to finish off the graph, all we have to do is copy this a few times, slightly rotate it and change the color. So Command C, Command V, slightly rotate it a little bit. We'll change this one to red. Command left square bracket key to send it behind. I'm gonna rotate it just a little bit further. And then I'll repeat this process. And just like that, we now have our graph and we have our slider. So I'm gonna select the artboard and I'm going to remove the grid. The last thing I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna change this number to something a little bit more accurate to what you might have as your actual savings. So let's do 3,898 and then 85 cents. And then we'll just leave the monthly income alone. So now we can create a duplicate of this artboard. So I'm gonna select it and hit Command D. And I'm gonna change this number to 415 because that is what we're gonna be dragging the slider to. And all we have to do is drag this circle. I'm gonna hold Shift as I drag to a reasonable position. We'll just put it center. And then we also need to change the width of this to there. And so now what we need to do is select all of these colors except the blue one, and then we're going to rotate them slightly. Since as we drag this slider, we want the red section to actually increase on our graph. So now we have the beginning and the end state. Now all we have to do is go into our layers panel and actually rename all of these objects to make sure that when we auto animate, everything is doing exactly what we want it to. So first up, with my layers panel open, I'm gonna select this blue shape. I'm gonna double click on the grouping and name it blue. And then I'm gonna go to the red one and name it red. And I'm gonna do that for each of these shapes. So now that I've done that for each of the colors, I'm gonna do that exactly the same for this one, making sure I keep the naming consistent. Okay, so now that my name is consistent as these auto-animate, that will be perfect. The only other thing that's going to move is the slider. So we'll name both of these elements. So I'll just name this one slider, and then I'll select the red bar and name that slider dash bar. So over here, I'll name the bar slider dash bar. and then grab the ellipse and name it slider. And so that is all the setup work we need. So let's head over to the prototype tab, and I'm going to select the slider and drag over to this artboard. I'm going to make sure that this is set to drag for the trigger and make sure the action is at auto animate. Then I'm going to select the slider on this artboard and drag it back over, and Adobe XD remembers the same settings. Now if we click the live preview option, if I click on this and slide, you'll notice that our numbers are changing, but also our graph is actually rotating to adjust for this price change. All right, so now that we've done all of that, we pretty much have the tutorial finished. Now I'm gonna show you one final touch that's gonna make it look really nice. We're actually gonna animate the numbers changing on each of these numbers. So to do this, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit Command-Shift-G to ungroup each of these groupings. And then I'm just gonna go over here into the pasteboard, and I'm gonna hold Alt and drag this over. So what we're actually going to do this is create each one of these as their own text box. So I'm just gonna grab my type tool and type out a cash symbol. And let's set it to our heading. And I'm just gonna position that right below. I'm gonna hold Alt and drag over, and I'm gonna set this to 1, hold Alt and drag over. You can do this with repeat grid, but I'm just gonna do this manually real quick because we're almost done. Set that to period, drag that in back, and then we need 2 more zeros. So we've basically made this number up here out of individual text areas. So I'm just gonna delete this original number. And what we need to do is select the 1 and hit repeat grid and then drag down a few ways. I'm gonna remove the spacing all the way to 0. And we only need this to go to 4 to match our in-screen number over here. So we're aiming for 415. So I'll just drag that over so we can see that. So that's what we're aiming for. So we need to go down 2, 3, 4. So we need to stop there. So we'll go up there, and then I'll hit ungroup grid. And then I'll change each of these all the way to 4. And I'm gonna do the same thing for the next number, except this time we have to drag way down. And that's where the effect's gonna look really cool, because we want these two numbers to change a lot because we're going up hundreds of dollars. So I'm gonna keep dragging down a little bit. And that'll work. So I'm gonna ungroup that, and then I'm gonna speed this up, but I'm just gonna go input 1, 2, 3 all the way to 9, go to 0, and then start over. All right, so after I've done that, I'm a few short. I need to go to 1, so I'm just gonna hold Alt and drag down. Change this one to 0, that one to 1, and then we can delete this one. So for the next digit, that's gonna be our final digit. We need that to go to 5. I'm actually just gonna grab all of these. I'm gonna hold Alt and drag them directly under, and we're just gonna reuse them. So let's just grab from 0 to 1, and we'll just grab all of that, holding Alt. And we're just gonna delete this 1. Position that there. And we need to take this to 5. So I'll just grab a few more, hold Alt and drag down. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right, so from here, we need to select all of this. So I'm gonna drag all the way down and hit Command-G. Next, what we need to do is we need to drag a rectangle around this number, select the rectangle and the grouping, and hit Command-Shift-M. And you can also do that by going to Object, Mask with Shape, which is right here. So now we have this grouping, and I'm gonna drag this over here. I'm gonna delete the original one, and I'm gonna put this one in its place. So now I can delete the 415. I'm gonna go into the Layers panel and name this mask group number. So now I'm gonna select that number, hit Command-C, select the second artboard and hit Command-V, and it'll put it exactly in the same position. And now what we need to do is we need to double click so that we can edit the group, and we need to select all these numbers and drag them into position. So I'm gonna drag the 4 into its place, and I'm gonna do the same for the rest of these numbers. I'm gonna drag all the way down, holding Shift to make sure I grab all of them, and drag all these up. Into that position, and then we'll do that with the last one. Now that I have all of them selected, I'm gonna drag them all the way up until that 5 is into the correct position. just like that. So now if I hit live preview, as I drag this over, you'll see the number is actually counting up to 415. And as I drag back down, it's gonna go back down. And that is all for today's tutorial. I hope you guys did enjoy it. Thanks again to Milnote for sponsoring today's video. If you want to check out their product for planning your next creative project, make sure you click on the link down in the description. If you liked this video, consider giving it a thumbs up, subscribe for more design and code related content. I now upload every Tuesday and Thursday, so make sure you have that notification bell on so you don't miss a video. And as always, have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.